A frictionless experience is quick, but it's thorough and it's profitable, and it gets your customers to return and recruit other people into your brand.
It's not really about pay, it's about influence. If you tend to be the person with the highest influence in a meeting, your ideas will be taken as directives.
You have to listen to your customers, and you have to know that you're going to be wrong 90% of the time.
So there's a real balance of making it easy and taking the friction out and not creating new problems, I guess, unintended consequences. So today we're replaying one of our favorite episodes, and Nick has some strong feelings about why we chose this episode.
Strong feelings? Chuck, we're talking about donuts here. And I quote this episode in meetings at least once a week. No kidding. Adam Candela's insights about balancing frictionless with profitability have literally changed how I think about product decisions.
But has it led you to eat more donuts?
No comment.
And that's exactly why we're bringing it back today. Today, we revisit our conversation with Adam Candela, who spent 5 years leading digital at Dunkin' and knows more about the hidden cost of making things too easy than anyone we've met.
And that's right. If you think frictionless just means fast and simple, Adam's going to flip that on its head. He breaks down why sometimes the most frictionless thing you can do is add a little friction back in.
Like his CarPlay example, Dunkin' had built this incredibly slick integration where you could reorder with just 2 taps while driving. Sounds perfect, right? Except they discovered they were losing upsell opportunities and actually training customers to spend less on every visit.
And that's the exact one that I quote all the time. And it's because it shows you how the extreme is one way or the other. And so if you are going down an incremental path towards the extreme, you can see that friction is not always the worst thing, because when you make it that easy to get the same thing every time, customers never discover you have loaded hash browns. And trust me, those things are pretty good.
He also gets into when creepy versus convenient crosses the line, like how location-based notifications can backfire if you're not careful. Nobody wants their coffee app stalking them.
And then there's also the internal team stuff where we talk about being the Hippo, which basically means the highest paid person in the office, which really isn't about actual pay. It's about influence and understanding when an idea is something that you present to a meeting. Some people will take that as a directive instead of just hypothesis and ideas.
Which connects to his philosophy on team dynamics, creating psychological safety so that your QA team feels comfortable saying, hey, I saw this feature on another app. Adam gets some of his best product ideas from the people closest to the product and not the highest paid person in the meeting.
And that's right. But I have to admit, I got called out in this episode for my acronym skills. Turns out Hippo should technically be Hipper, if we're being precise.
You did. But Adam's bigger point was about stakeholders who think digital should be quick and easy. His pushback on that mentality, it's digital, just turn it on, is something every product team needs to hear.
Especially when he said he'd hurt anyone who disagrees. A little excessive. But you know what? That became one of our most used sound bites, and honestly, it's perfect.
So if you've ever struggled to balance customer experience with profitability or wondered why your frictionless feature isn't driving the results you expected, this episode is going to give you a whole new framework.
And if you're a product manager dealing with stakeholders who just don't understand why things take time, Adam's perspective will help arm you with the right arguments.
Let's get into it. Welcome to The Frictionless Experience, the podcast where we lay waste to digital friction. I'm Chuck Moxley.
And I'm Nick Paladino.
Joining us today in the Frictionless studio is Adam Candela. Adam spent the last 5 years as the Director of Digital Retail and Digital Marketing at Inspire Dunkin' Brands. Before that, he spent 5 years at BJ's Wholesale Club and 15 years at Staples in various e-commerce roles. Thanks for joining us, Adam.
Thanks for having me. Appreciate it.
I think you recently left Dunkin', but give us sort of the backdrop of what you and your team were charged with, sort of the big priorities that you were focused on there.
Sure, yeah, at Inspire. Well, I started out at Dunkin' pre-acquisition, but our job was really anything digital that the customer would interact with at all. And that was mostly the digital app for Dunkin'. So driving people to order ahead, supporting people who just scan and pay. And we can talk about that later because it's an interesting challenge when I was there trying to work through that. But really any way that a customer wanted to digitally engage with Dunkin' as a brand was under our team.
So, Adam, we're all about frictionless experiences. How do you define frictionless digital experiences?
Yeah. So for me, I always think of it as letting a customer interact with your brand digitally or supporting physically with digital in a way that will get them to come back and also recruit for your brand. But you have to do it in a way that's profitable too for the business. And so I think the biggest word that I use with it a lot is balance. I always found myself using that word no matter where I was, is the balance between making it so easy for the customer that you're maybe potentially offsetting some revenue or some profitability, but you really want to be able to have them come back and you want them to advocate for your brand to everybody. That's what I describe as frictionless, because it's not even just frictionless for the customer, it's frictionless for the brand to then recruit new customers because you've got your customers doing it for you.
That is an interesting thing. I was actually just reading Simon Sinek's Start With Why, and in there's a part that talks about loyalty, and don't confuse repeat purchase with loyalty, because what you're really talking about is building a frictionless experience that builds loyalty so that you are committed to the brand, and it's not just the enjoying a cup of coffee because it was $1. It's enjoying a cup of coffee because you're truly sold on Dunkin'. And by the way, I am.
All right.
I will
Good.
go out of my way to find a Dunkin' on a road trip because I dare not stop at the green place.
I'm the same way, man. I'm the same way. When you grow up in Massachusetts, that's just how it is. But you're right. Yeah, it's not just making sure that somebody can get the cup of coffee for cheap too, right? In fact, a lot of times, and you guys know this, but those are the sort of customers that aren't going to come back when you're too heavily promoting those types of things. They're not going to come back. It's the people that just love the brand and love the service that they get, which is where it starts to become a challenge, right? Because when you're in the digital space, especially at Dunkin', but this is true of anywhere, when you're in the digital space, you can't control that last experience that they have. You can only control so much of their full experience. So if you say frictionless experience for a coffee chain, you have to take into account the operations. I mean, that's more than half of it. I mean, that's a big part of it. And so there's ways you can help that with digital, right? So I mentioned scan and pay. A large percentage of customers at Dunkin' actually just use their app to scan. They'll pull up to the drive-through, show their app, and they scan, and they've got their amount on their card, and they get their points, and they're gone. It's easier if you actually order ahead because you don't have to wait in the line necessarily quite as long. And if everybody did that, the lines would go a lot quicker. But getting people to do that and giving them a reason to do that was always really the hardest part of that job for me and my team. Convincing them to order it within the app to actually make it frictionless for everybody waiting behind them in line at the drive-thru.
Well, that's a relatively new concept, right? I mean, flashback to pre-pandemic, nobody ordered ahead on QSR brands, maybe 3% of orders, right? Because it just wasn't a thing. and then that whole thing, it's like Instacart. It's like so many things that happen. It completely changed behaviors that I'm curious, do you know what percentage were order ahead?
I do. Yeah. I'm not sure if I could share that, to be honest. But it was very small. You're right. It was a small percentage. I think also too, sort of like the Apple model, right? Where we don't necessarily want to be first. We want to do it well. We want to do it the best. I think there was a little bit of that we used at Dunkin', at least, of we don't have to be the first one. And this was before I was there. We don't have to be necessarily the first to have an app experience and order ahead, but let's make sure that it's the best. There might have been a little bit of that at play too, but certainly order ahead was smaller pre-pandemic, and we saw a spike, but it continued to grow even after pandemic. The spike was big, but it wasn't like it stopped. It continued to grow and grow and grow. And so, people got used to it, but also I think it spoke to the ease of the experience. But yeah, our challenge was just how do we get more people to actually use that order ahead? And it's a small consideration purchase too, right? So why do I need to open an app and order it ahead, right? I don't even want to show you this app. You should just know my face because I come here all the time, right? So give me my discount, give me my points.
I'll tell you one thing that I saw recently was the text wine purchase application where they'll send out a blast to your text and all you have to do is reply yes, and then you'll get the wine delivered to you.
Oh, I got to write that down for my wife. Can I, what's the,
Yeah, I'll have to remember the brand because I don't even remember the brand, which I guess is a testament to some level of marketing there. But it leaves an opportunity for something as simple as coffee. If I could just send a text message to a number that is just my regular order, and then on my way, especially say you live in like Boston, you live in Boston, you're walking from one stop to the next, you're passing by, you send your text, you just swing in and grab it. It's a little bit harder for me in Atlanta because I literally have to drive everywhere to do anything around here, but that's not Dunkin's problem.
yeah, I mean, I think there's a lot of different opportunities there with just the device itself, right? I mean, we were, without exposing any sort of secrets or anything, we were looking at, is there a way to notify people just as they're walking by if they're using if you give us permission, we can use your device's location. We know you're near a Dunkin'. We could do things like that. Send you, hey, a push notification. It's time to place your order. Do we send a push notification to somebody at, if they're always order their coffee at 8 in the morning or something, do we send them a push at 7:30 and say, hey, this is what you want? You hit the button and you order it. A lot of challenges with that for sure, but there's a lot of things that can be unlocked there that are interesting to see if those kind of things happen for the future.
Yeah, and that sounds very similar, just application based rather than a text message. But yeah, it's very cool.
The challenge you run into sometimes is the balance, again, the word balance, but the balance between those people who will use that tech and those who might not. I'm actually somebody that's a little bit more, I don't like to do things through text necessarily. I don't love when companies are sending me push notifications too much. And so the balance of that has to be on. So you just have to find the right things that resonate with the right people. And we certainly did some more tech forward things like CarPlay and Siri and widgets and things like that we were starting to do. But you have to make sure that your customers are there too. You have to meet them where they are. If you've got a customer that's not as technically savvy or as digitally savvy, they might not even interact with that, and you might be wasting your resources on that.
I'd actually be curious to hear more about the CarPlay integration that you're talking about because that sounds like something I would use, especially on the road, to my example before.
CarPlay was an interesting one. We launched that, or they launched that, I should say, during the pandemic. And then, hey, when people get back in their cars and they're back to their routines and their traffic patterns, it seemed like a no-brainer. And I think it's successful for those people who use it. I would say the challenge of it is sometimes you can make frictionless so easy, again, that you're maybe jeopardizing some profit, or you're jeopardizing, somebody trying additional items or things like that, because there's limits you have to work through within CarPlay. It's pretty cool. It was just basically like a quick reorder. If you already had orders, if you were somebody that came all the time, you could look at your reorders and just tap a couple buttons and you could order it all through your car's dash. But then there's safety concerns too, and some of those things that come into play. So, you had to make sure you have a certain balance of funds on your card. If you need to load funds, then you have to do that on your device. If you want to edit your order in any way, you have to do that on your device. So it ended up streamlining the people that truly just wanted to get the same thing every day. It helps them, but are you driving people to spend less? And, not everybody uses CarPlay, which ties into, I think, something you've said several times, Nick. I've heard you have to be humble. I mean, I was full bore on CarPlay. Like, this is going to be great. This is a no-brainer. People are in their cars. They're driving to work every day. They're getting their coffee. Not everybody's using CarPlay like I am.
That would be me. I am not a CarPlay fan. I actually turned it off on my phone. I found it just took over my car too much. And I also have Google built into my car. So they were like competing and fighting. So I just disabled CarPlay. I'm like, I felt like I was the only person in America who did that, but
I also disabled CarPlay, but it's because I have an Android, so I'm that guy.
Okay, so Android Auto, right?
That's true. You are. He's
Either
an
one is-
anti-Apple guy.
Right.
Uh-oh.
I'm sure you built the functionality for Android Auto too. I just took an opportunity to.
You know what? We didn't get around to it, to be honest.
Oh, look at that.
But we were, again, you have to balance priorities and percentage of users on the different platforms. So
You touch on something, and you've touched on it now multiple times. I guess the category I would put is social engineering. You have to also think about, because you've got safety concerns in CarPlay. If they're spending time ordering coffee on the dashboard, they risk having an accident. You talked about the location as you're walking past a Dunkin'. Something we talked about in our book, An Audience of One, was how to be personalized without being creepy. Because if I'm walking by Dunkin' and you pop up and go, "Hey, we see you, you're in front of Dunkin', have Dunkin'," it gets a little creepy at times. So there's a real balance of making it easy and taking the friction out and not creating new problems, I guess, unintended consequences, maybe.
sure, yeah. I was thinking about how did we used to do this even years ago? And back when I was at Staples years and years ago, we were building essentially what is now just people refer to as like a subscription type thing, right? It was basically, you're buying this ink every X months. We know what ink you need because you buy the same one all the time. Why don't you just sign up for this program and we'll ship you the ink every 3 months or every 6 months or whatever. And we were working through building that out. This was, I think, 2005 or something like that. And I remember thinking, well, how do they? And nowadays you could probably handle it much better. This is 20 years ago. How do you handle, like, what if I just keep getting the ink shipped to me? Like, these were things that we thought about back then. Like, how do they shut it off? How do we know if they got a new printer or whatever? And yeah, it can start to get a little bit, you don't want to annoy your customers. Maybe it's not creepy, but I think about like my prescription delivery that I have for blood pressure medicine. I've got like 37 bottles of blood pressure pills upstairs because it just auto renews and it just kind of keeps coming. And I don't want to have to go through the friction of telling them, "Hey, stop." In the same way, I don't necessarily want somebody telling me, "Hey, we see you're around the corner and you didn't, buy your coffee today." Or it's 7:30, it's time to get your coffee. Yeah, well, I'm not going to work today. So why are you bothering me? You got to get that right. That personalization stuff, you got to get it absolutely right. It's a huge challenge. And I've heard you guys talk about it before with a lot of guests, but the creep factor is real, and you have to avoid it.
I'll tell you one of the creepy things, and now to me it doesn't, like, it makes sense, but you go to Home Depot and you swipe your credit card, and if your credit card is signed into your account, then it's going to automatically put your receipt into your account. For the longest time, I thought that was so wild and creepy. But it's only because one time you go to Home Depot and you put in your email and it ties it to your credit card, and then your email is now tied to both your sign-in account and on the actual transaction. And then from that point forward, you swipe that same credit card and it goes into your account. I thought that was so wild. For the longest time, I was like, how did they do that? But it's so simple. Now I rely on it. Like, I always use the same credit card because I'm like, I must have my same credit card on the same, like, everything, every time.
Exactly. Although I think I go to Home Depot more than I would go to Dunkin'. I'm a regular at Home Depot, so they probably just see my face and know what I'm getting. But no, I agree. It's pretty crazy.
We could do a whole episode on convenient or creepy.
Oh, that would be fun, man.
Yeah,
That'd
that
be
would
really
be.
fun, actually.
I don't think you'd surprise anybody if you just called this creepy with Adam Candela and put my picture there. That would nobody would be shocked.
That's awesome. So, Adam, you've talked about the balance of frictionless and profitability. Give us an example of when you remove friction and you hurt profitability.
Yeah. So, I mean, I think even just going back to that CarPlay example, you've removed friction essentially because the person's in their car. They don't even have to open the app. They're on CarPlay. They tap Dunkin'. They see their coffee, the order that they did last time. It's literally 2 taps and it's there and it's ready to go. What you've removed, though, is the ability for them to see any other products that you might have. You've removed, the chance for you to maybe have them add something else, a donut or something, to their order. They literally cannot do that now, and so now it's even harder for them to spend more with your company if you want them to. And so, I think even that you can run into that trap a little bit. I think with some personalization. even within the app, right? If we're still talking coffee, if I'm pulling up my app as a customer and I see my order that I've ordered before and I tap it, if I don't get something that shows me, hey, you could also get this, I'm gonna take the path of least resistance, right? Like water. I'm just gonna try and get there and out as quick as I can. A very small consideration purchase. If I make it that easy for somebody to just get in and out, then I'm foregoing any chance to show them something else or show them why maybe they want to come back again next week and get something else. You have to introduce a little bit of friction or keep a little bit of friction. Maybe you're not introducing it in order to make sure that you're being profitable, because the return trips probably, even with something like coffee, that, it was always surprising to me that you might think as an outsider that somebody's coming all the time. They're coming 2-3 times a week. It's actually not the majority of the customers who are frequenting a coffee place. They're not going there 2-3 times a week. They're going there, maybe a few times a month. And so your return trips aren't going to make up for making it so easy to get in and out and giving them $1 or $2 coffee. You're going to lose. You're going to lose in the long run. And if you give somebody a chance to try something else at your company, right, then they might like it, and oh, I didn't realize you even had this. It's not as much as the grocery store, the old grocery store thing where you hide the milk and the eggs in the back and make them walk all the way through the store. But if you don't have to necessarily put it right front and center with them. But if I go back to even my Staples days and think about copy paper, right? People come in 135848. I still remember the SKU was the red box copy paper, your basic copy paper. Somebody comes in, they want paper, they're in, they're out. They might need a different paper. They might need a heavier paper. They might need paper that uses a laser printer paper, right? Some of those papers are actually better for the task that they need. And so again, if you make it too easy to just come in and out and get that paper, you're missing a chance to sell them on something they might need and gets you a little bit more profit. And if you do that, give them what they need and get a little more profit, then they'll actually become more loyal because they got what they needed and they knew you're giving them something of value. You're not trying to just get more money out of them. You're trying to give them something of value, but something that they need, so they'll come back again. So those are a couple examples. I'm sure I could probably talk for hours. You guys could probably talk for hours about it too, right? That profitability and making it too easy thing is a tough nut to crack.
I think it's a really interesting example. I could see it now. Someone's like, you know what? I didn't know Dunkin' had donuts.
That's because they took donuts out of the name.
I mean, it's not just the donuts, Nick. There's more than that there. But yes, I hope they have loaded hash browns. As somebody that's going a lot, the loaded hash browns are those.
I do, and those things are great. I was obviously making a cheeky joke, but I was very sad to see the donuts name go away. But I kind of get it. Everyone says just Dunkin'. No one says donuts. But
yeah, that was before my time, so I don't really have the insight into it. But I think everybody still calls it Dunkin' Donuts.
So Nick, I think my favorite retailer and I need therapy.
You and another website?
I've waited 5 seconds for it to load. 5. I could have gone and brewed coffee.
That's a quick coffee maker, first of all, but that sounds like a performance issue to me.
Yeah, instead of communicating, it just spun.
So you left, I'm sure. Classic abandonment issue due to latency.
Exactly. And that's why the Lowe's SRE team built site speed targets with Blue Triangle, so their users don't get ghosted by loading icons.
This is 5 steps to faster pages and fewer heartbreaks, all in the context of improved experience and improved revenue.
In fact, we turned it into a free playbook.
It's like a couples therapy for your digital experience, for you and your website, Chuck.
So be sure to grab the 5-step site speed target playbook at bluetriangle.com/playbook.
Because love is patient, but users aren't.
Again, we talked about the social engineering thing. it's so easy to get all of that stuff wrong, that easy stuff. Like Alexa constantly asks me, hey, I think it's time you order XYZ product because you ordered it. And the frequency of those things change so much that I am not it's another thing. I feel like suddenly I'm a Luddite because I'm not a fan of the automatic reordering. I have almost nothing on that because it never times correctly. I'm either getting it too early or I'm having to rush a shipment because it didn't time correctly. I guess we just have unusual use patterns, but it is kind of that tricky thing. And in the case of, if I think coffee, when we are in the office, which is about once a quarter, and I'm there with colleagues, I will sometimes stop and get 3 or 4 other drinks. And then if it constantly brings that one back up, while I'm here at home, I'm never ordering those drinks. It's those people aren't even with me. So it's that weird kind of, or not weird, but the challenge of making it easy without complicating it and adding unnecessary friction that annoys.
Yeah, you can try too hard. And that all comes back, I think, to some of the things I've heard Nick say before too, which is that humility of, we might have a great idea. We might think that this is the right thing to do to, let's a subscription or whatever. You have to listen to your customers and you have to know that you're going to be wrong 90% of the time, or at least I was wrong 90% or 95% of the time for me, but you're wrong. You're usually wrong. And you need to make sure that you're not just jamming something through that you think makes sense because, the company's asking for it or the company would benefit from the profit of it. You have to make sure that it's something long-term customers will want.
Yeah, and furthermore, if you do jam something through under your own bias and you seek to prove it, now it's just damaging, right? Like, and you see that time and time and time again inside brands that just force something through, and it boggles my mind. But it's so easy to misinterpret data, especially since data itself is actually very complex, super nuanced. I mean, there was a stat that my wife brought up this morning about how some percentage of something was related to the user doing something else. I really wish I could remember this, but when we started talking about it, it was like, well, of course, the users that use this are also, oh, you know what? It was pregnancy. My wife is 8 months pregnant, and it was eating dates. It was eating dates. And so a woman that eats dates is 38% more likely to have a spontaneous labor, which basically means not be induced. I was like, wait a second, that stat doesn't pass the sniff test to me. The connection is someone that eats dates believes in spontaneous labor and believes in the benefit of dates. So they are less likely to schedule an induction. And that's the correlation. And those are the problems inside data where you can misinterpret, and your bias can just come through and you can say, well, dates are causing spontaneous labor. No, they're not necessarily. They might be, but it's not 38%.
Something I don't remember much from college because I'm so old and it's been a while, but something that always stuck with me. I had a professor that would say this over and over again: correlation does not prove causation, over and over and over again. And anytime I hear anybody say anything of like, oh, well, this percent of people did it, so, or this means that, I always try to be a little skeptical of it and say, okay, well, the two things happened, yes, but do we know that this happened because of that, or is it something else? Like, what are all the variables there? I mean, you could spend your whole life going through all the variables of digital e-commerce data. For God's sake, that's actually, it's just like it's a fun place to be, but you can just go down a path where you don't shower for weeks because you're just looking at all the data, trying to figure out how it all plays together and trying to take your own bias out of it. So you mentioned it boggles your mind that some of these things sort of get pushed through, and it makes me think of something that I've encountered, multiple places, is if you don't have a strong product management organization, really from top down, doesn't mean everyone has to be running in sprints necessarily across the whole organization. But if you don't have a strong sense of the conceptuals within product management, how it works, how it needs to work from the top down, then you will almost inevitably run into that situation where you're getting, conflicting conflicting directions from different groups, the groups that are tasked with building out products and roadmaps and strategies, and then the groups that are, they're leaders perhaps, or other groups that, if you aren't all on that same page and you don't all understand how it's supposed to work as a framework, then it can be really challenging. And as a Scrum team, you could be working on making iterative improvements over time, for years and years and years, and it almost feels like, well, are we providing value? Because we're getting this from left field saying, no, you have to do this. And so, by the way, it has to be done now. That's a real challenge that I've encountered everywhere I've been, is making sure that the whole organization at least understands what the product function is and how it's supposed to work and how those teams should work.
So that's a great transition. We've talked a lot about external friction and customer friction. Let's talk a little bit about internal friction with the team and how that can enhance customer experience. What have you experienced in your past with cross-team dynamics and stakeholder buy-in, and how you get frictionless teams working?
Well, I think if I start at the smaller piece of it within the team itself, I think humility is something that at least I've always tried to really, well, I don't really try to practice it, but I just do practice it. It's the only way to go, I think, for all teammates. And what I mean by that is, you have to be, if you're the product manager or the business facing member of that team, right, responsible to go to the stakeholders and bring the strategy and the vision and get the team, working on a product, you really have to go in there and say, listen, we're a team. I'm just the mouthpiece, essentially. I'm going to help to break down barriers for you guys. I'm going to help to insulate you. I'm going to help to explain why the hell we're doing what we're doing here to everybody else that doesn't get it. But you need to create that within the team so that the team can function with as little friction as possible. And by the way, if you do that, the team works. If you truly do it and truly understand how valuable it is, everybody on the team will feel safe to say, hey, I had an idea. Oh, what about this? So what if we do that? And your products and your results will be exponentially better, because now you're getting truly unfettered ideas from people on your team that will definitely lead to things that customers want. Your teammates are customers too. They're using your apps or your websites, et cetera. And so, I've been in situations where the guy from QA is going, well, how come we don't do this? I was using XYZ app, or I was on, 123.com, and I saw this. It's like, oh yeah, I don't know. I don't know why we aren't doing. That's a great idea. You have to approach it like that. If you try to come into the team and dictate how things should be, it's not going to work. You need to let the team do its thing and know that you're there to support, not tell. That's at least how I've tried to approach it. Now that's the team. Within the broader organization, that's where the challenges really arise, because not everybody, at least in my experience, not everybody in the organization knows what the heck you're doing on this team. What's a sprint? What are you talking about? What's a retrospective? What grooming? What are you guys doing? I don't like Jira. I don't want to learn another tool. Like the number of times I've shown people in other parts of the organization, like, you guys could use Jira here too. And then, software agnostic, but a platform like this, you could use it too, and it would so greatly benefit your processes and your ability to communicate with us. That's where I mentioned before, like, if it's not from leadership down, you're going to have challenges, because you're going to be trying to do things in a way that I've seen personally work really well, meaning Scrum type framework, and you're trying to do that while other teams are maybe don't understand it, or don't care to understand it, or just don't have the time to try and learn it, or that kind of thing. So what I've always tried to do to try and reduce the friction between the two internal and external teams within the same organization is to try and educate people on, hey, here's some different tools you could use. Come to our stand-ups, come to our demos, please. I don't think there's anything more beneficial to a complete organization than if everybody in the organization is coming to the demos. Something we did at BJ's, which was fantastic. We had a whole floor to ourselves as the digital team, just a big open floor. And every Friday we would have demos, and we would open the whole building up, say, come on up to the 6th floor. It didn't happen all the time, but when it did, it felt good because you knew people were actually trying to learn and understand what the hell we're doing up here on this floor. And I think as people came more and more, they saw the benefit of it. Oh, every week you guys are actually building something or making changes. And if I come enough, I can actually tell you guys something that I want to see. And in maybe 2-3 months, you can show me. That is super powerful, and I think helps do a lot of the explaining to people that just might not be familiar with the concepts.
One of the things that I want to kind of tap back on when you were talking about a member of QA saw some feature on 123.com was your example, but obviously that's mostly made up. But that idea, you're like, that is a great idea. Let's do that. That is fostering a team of innovation. And one of the lessons I learned really early in my career was to not become the hippo of the room. And what that means, Hippo is an acronym standing for highest paid person in the office, but it's not really about pay, it's about influence. If you tend to be the person with the highest influence in a meeting, your ideas will be taken as directives. And if you are constantly, as the highest influence person in a meeting, if you are constantly the one with the idea, that's going to start becoming the directive, and it's going to create an environment that stops innovation, like what you're talking about, where this QA member spoke up and said, let's think about this. That is a great idea. It's going to stop that because people are going to take that idea as a directive and continue moving it forward. It's something that I've held very closely to myself, especially as I'm continuing to advance my career, because I start to become the influential person in a meeting, and I have to be very careful of, hey, what about this idea? And then all of a sudden it's like,
yeah, they take off with it, and it's, well, Adam wants it or Nick wants it. Like, well, I don't. The number of times I've said, guys, I'm just throwing it out there like you guys, like, let's just spitball and try and figure it out. I don't know. I don't have the answers. I promise you. There's no ulterior motive. There's no hippo going on. I'm not even like hip. Like, there's none of that. I just want to try and get you guys to throw out ideas that will be better than mine too. I think I read something, I don't know if this is true. I think it was Bezos that said, I always try and speak last when I'm in a meeting, because he at least had that self-awareness that if I say something first, it's going to influence how everybody else thinks. And I couldn't agree with you more on that one, Nick. Like, there's been so many times where, I'll leave a meeting and then I'll have to reach out to people later and go, I hope you didn't think I was telling you that we should do that. I'm just trying to get ideas. And for the most part, the teams have been really great with that. And that example of the QA the QA people at these companies are some of the most unsung heroes. They know how everything works. They also know how all the competition works. They know everything, and they are some of the smartest and most engaged and passionate and loyal folks in an organization. And so you can learn a lot from, the people that are testing these things over and over and over again. They will help you come up with great ideas.
Nick, not to be picky, but highest paid person in the room does not spell hippo.
Hipper.
It'd be hipper.
Office.
Oh, the office. Okay.
The office.
Well, I was never the highest paid person anyway, so lowest paid. I was a Lippo.
Hippo.
Adam, what is one commonly held belief about frictionless digital experiences that you fundamentally disagree with?
So I don't know how widespread this is, but just something that I've seen in my experience. I think there's a belief for folks outside of core digital product teams that it should be quote unquote easy, or at least quick, because it's digital. And what I mean by that is, hey, we've got this initiative that we want to do. We know you guys are doing your sprints and your, whatever, but we need this now. We need it quick. And you guys should just be able to turn it on. It's digital. The appreciation for what goes into whatever that initiative is or that piece of work is, to be able to work with the team to figure out the architecture of it, figure out the story pointing of it, think through all the different test cases with QA, think through all the different places that it might touch or things that it might change within the experience that's already there. Is it something customers want? What are we trying to actually solve, right? That question is constantly needs to be asked by product management. What are you trying to solve with this? And it can frustrate your stakeholders for sure. I know I've frustrated them in the past with, well, what are you actually trying to do? Well, I'm trying to put this button there. Yeah, but why? Like, what are you actually trying to accomplish? And I think when you ask those questions, you get to the root of what they're trying to do, then you can maybe do it in a different way than what they're saying. It might not be as quick as what they're trying to do, but quick isn't the only way to be frictionless, right? If we go back to sort of what I think about for frictionless, a frictionless experience is quick, but it's thorough and it's profitable and it gets your customers to return and recruit other people into your brand. And if you aren't doing that with everything that you're building, or at least trying to do that, then you're going to fail. So for that reason, I would say it's digital. It should be quick, I think is something I don't agree with. I would hurt anybody that says otherwise. No, I wouldn't, but
that's strong.
No, I would. But I disagree with that statement.
Well, and I was going to go on to a different part of what you said about the idea of what problem are you trying to solve? I can't tell you how many meetings I've gone into where they're going, well, we could do this, we could do this, and they start with the solution instead of the problem. And very often the solution they're going down that path is not the best solution because they haven't clearly defined the problem.
Yeah. And by the way, I don't know the right solution. I don't know the right design for it. Again, let's talk to the team. We'll figure it out. And I'm not saying we know it. We will gather customer feedback. We'll go through all the, reviews and what people are telling us through our customer service channels, et cetera. And we'll test it. We'll learn all those types of things, right? That's the right way to do it. And unfortunately, it just isn't as quick as everybody wants it to be sometimes.
I already referred to it once, though, but you can start with Why by Simon Sinek. It's actually a very good way to approach leadership, frankly. Start with why.
Why?
Do I need to start drawing the circles?
Well, on that note, this has been a great conversation, Adam. Where can people reach you? What's the best way to connect with you?
Yeah, I'm on LinkedIn. I'm not on any other social media. So LinkedIn, you can find me there for sure.
Well, thanks for tuning in for this episode. Be sure to like us on your favorite podcast app so that you get notified every time we have a new episode. If you've not signed up for the newsletter, please do that. You'll get a lot more detail from every episode that we go into on the alternate weeks. And you can always reach me on LinkedIn. I am at Chuck Moxley, and Nick is
At In Paladino.
Hey, Nick, great conversation with Adam today about his experience at Dunkin'. Really interesting how he approached frictionless experiences, that balance between making things easy for customers, but you got to still maintain profitability.
Yeah, and I loved his take on CarPlay integration. While it made ordering super simple by predicting when you're going to arrive to your Dunkin' and you can just confirm that you want your regular order, they lost opportunities for upselling and showcasing their other products and gaining loyalty and passion around other products. You just kept people in their same routine through this product. So sometimes making things too frictionless can end up hurting the bottom line.
Well, and if I tried ordering with CarPlay, it would probably hurt me and my car at the same time. So speaking of balance, though, his point about personalization was spot on, like how you have to be careful with location-based notification so they don't come across as creepy. That whole "we see you walking by Dunkin" thing could definitely backfire.
Yeah, and I certainly wouldn't like it, though I did get a kick out of his reaction when I mentioned not having CarPlay because I'm an Android user. Of course, I was being a little sarcastic because I have Android Auto. But the bigger point here was being humble with tech adoption, not the importance. Just because we think something like CarPlay integration is going to be huge doesn't mean customers will actually use it.
Well, and I think that relates back to his insights about internal team dynamics as well. Really appreciated his take on creating psychological safety so team members feel comfortable sharing ideas, like the example he gave about the QA team members often having great product suggestions since they are so close to that product.
Yeah, and he totally resonated with my point about not being the hippo in the room. That's the most influential voice in the meeting who inadvertently turns ideas into directives. Though you did call me out for my acronym skills there, Chuck.
I'm sorry, I had to do it. His final point, though, about disagreeing with "it's digital, so it should be quick and easy" mentality was powerful. That whole discussion about stakeholders not always understanding the complexity behind digital initiatives really hit home.
For sure. And hey, who knew we'd end up with his threat to hurt anyone who disagrees as a potential soundbite? That was a fun moment, and we're going to use that one.